And again, we thank you so much, and let's welcome our senior minister to the podium, Reverend Frank Phillip. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Tim. Good morning. You know, something's very important, and it's important for us to know. No matter what we face in life, today, tomorrow, expected, unexpected, easy, hard, challenging, traumatic, tragic, wonderful, joyful, great days, successful days, not so good days, bad hair days, whatever we face in life, there is a Bible passage that says, even this shall pass away. Even this shall pass away. The good, the not so good, the great, the wonderful, the sad, the traumatic, the depressing, the challenging, even this shall pass away. And so when storms show up in our life that we do not call good, do not make us feel good, we should know that if we hold on to our faith in God, it will pass away. See, everything will pass away, but I would share with you today, there's the easy road and there's the not so easy road. Everything we can let go of. We can let go of it gradually, or we can let go of it with claw marks. It can be pulled away from us. But even this shall pass away. When we're in that moment and we're confused, or we're hurt, or chaos is breaking out, in those moments of crisis, we have the opportunity to pray. This week we prayed for 24 hours over all of the prayer requests. If you filled up a prayer request in the past 30 days in this month, we prayed over it for 24 hours. Many of you were there with us, and I thank you. We read the names over and over and over again, 20 minutes every hour, silently and reverently. And so prayer, I realized while I was sitting there praying, that it was as beautiful as it was, that prayer was meant to be brought out into the world. We're meant to be walking prayers. And the moment to pray is in that time of crisis, in that time when we feel out of control, in that time where we feel everything slipping away. And Jesus the Christ, the master teacher, he taught a very simple structure for prayer. And it was a new structure. It was a new way of understanding prayer. What he taught, and I want to talk about it today because there's so much going on and there's so much change in our lives. And I've read so many of those confidential prayer requests. And the next time you find yourself in crisis, I pray that you think about what I shared today. Because Jesus the Christ transformed the idea of prayer. He turned it upside down. So you understand, before Jesus, the way of prayer was to have somebody else pray for you in a temple, to buy a sacrifice, a dove, a lamb, and to let somebody else sacrifice it for you, and hope that you are one of the lucky ones to get your prayer answered. And then in walks Jesus to this same temple and literally and metaphorically turns the tables upside down. And it's not only Jesus, any enlightened teacher that has followed him has taught us that the power of God is within us. And so what Jesus taught was more than rote ritualistic prayer. There are three basic elements that he shared. And he summed them up in the 11th chapter of Mark and the 24th verse. What things soever you desire, when you pray, believe that you have received them and you shall have them. Period. No buts, no maybes, No chances, no odds, no withholding, no if you're good, no I'm making a list and checking it twice. None of that. What things soever you desire, when you pray, believe you have received them and you shall have them. So I want to take that apart a little, because the three elements of powerful prayer, transformative prayer, healing prayer, what we would understand as miraculous prayer, are very simple. Desire, action, and belief. What you desire, that's a mind thing. Pray, that's an action thing. Believe, that's a foundation thing. And you shall have them. So we're going to talk about mind, action, and the foundation we bring to prayer today. You know what? All of our life is a combination of those three elements. Whether we're a prayerful person or not a prayerful person. Whether we go to church or we don't go to church. Whether we believe in this church or that church or whatever. Do you know that all of our life, everything we have today, every experience around us, every thought we think, every belief we hold, is a product of our desires combined with our actions and our foundational beliefs about ourselves and our world. Our desires, what are our desires? For me, my desires are my hopes, my goals, my dreams, my plans, my ideas, my visions. My desires are wrapped up, and sometimes they're voiced, and sometimes they're so holy and they're so great that I don't dare share them. Now, desires, I said it's a mind thing, so it includes everything we think. Unity's third principle says, thoughts held in mind produce after their own kind. In other words, thoughts tend to be like dominoes. Once you let one thought in, they create the next thought, the next thought, the next thought, and they can cycle us to greatness, and they can drive us insane if we let one negative thought in sometimes and they start multiplying in our head. See, desires include every thought we think and hold on to. And so, if we're obsessed with lack, limitation, with not enoughness, with sickness, with disharmony, if that's our waking thought, our sleeping thought, if that's what we talk about and think about all day long, our fears and our doubts actually qualify as desires under the theme of today's sermon. See, a desire is something we hold on to in our mind and never let go of. So we don't normally think about poverty and sickness as a desire. But if that's what we're thinking about, and that's what we're talking about, and that's what we're writing about, and that's what the dominoes in our mind, thought by thought by thought, are driving us crazy with, that's what we should expect to manifest in our life. And so the second, our desires generally lead to actions. Actions, you think about doing stuff, but I'd like to expand that a little. Actions are every word we speak. It's not what goes into a man's mouth that defiles him. It is what comes out of him from his heart. See, actions aren't just doing, it's speaking. It's sometimes inaction is not action. You know what Dr. King said? It wasn't the people that were supporting segregation that were the shame. It was the silent masses that knew it was wrong and didn't take any action. And so too often in our head, we have great dreams, we have great desires, we have great plans. God has given us incredible talents, and we simply remain ambivalent. Oh, well, maybe, maybe not. You see, our actions include our words. They include our decisions. They include those moments that we break through a fear or a doubt and do something that brings us closer to our understanding of God. See, actions include our prayers, but they also include our curses. And if we're honest with ourselves and true to ourselves, many times we curse ourselves and our dreams and our desires a lot more than anybody outside of ourselves. See, our actions include what we praise, but also include what we blame. It includes the compliments that we give, but it also includes the complaints we send out. And really, when we focus upon our part fully, we act consciously. We act with holiness, if you will. We act with grace. We act and we're conscious and we make decisions that move us closer to positive dreams, desires, and we consciously distance ourselves from that not enoughness, lack, and limitation. I have come that you may have life and may have it more abundantly, is what the master teacher taught. And so when we think about these ideas, desire and action, it makes sense how they're interrelated. But all the great desires in the world, combined with every right action, can never carry us past our belief. We all have foundational beliefs. We have them in our heart. We have them in our soul, if you will. It's what we think of God and what we believe about God. It's everything we believe about ourselves. It's what we carry around with. It's our confidences. It's our doubts. It's our insecurities. It's our self-esteem issues. It's the great things that we've done throughout our whole life. And at the same time, it's the doubts and the fears and the not enoughness about ourself that we carry around to. So you could have the greatest desire. You can desire to be an Olympic star. You can desire to be, a pro athlete. And you can take all the action, practice morning, noon, and night. And if you don't believe in yourself, you will not succeed. Prayer works the same way. We can have all these prayers, but how many times in our life do we put in the prayer with a fear as we're writing it, as we're placing it, that it won't be answered? That's our own voice. That's not the voice of God that's telling us the prayer may not be answered. You see, our belief that's foundational gets carried into everything we do. If we have no confidence in ourselves and we're showing up for a job interview, people feel it. If we have no confidence in ourselves and we're going out on a date, the person will feel it. It's how we believe about ourselves. There's a relationship counselor I read. Her name is Dr. Sherry Carter Scott. And she says, nobody will ever ultimately treat us better than we treat ourselves. And she asked all these people in a workshop, tell me your vision about the perfect, loving, kind relationship. And everybody's like, oh, she's supportive and he's wonderful and he lifts me up and he brings me flowers and she cooks for me and she this for me and she that for me. And they go on and on and on and ranting and raving about this fantasy, wonderful relationship in a life. And then she stops and there's a moment of silence. She goes, how many of you treat yourself that way? And the people were honest. They said, no, I'm critical of myself. I'm mean to myself. I deprive myself a good meal. I deprive taking care of my body. I don't work out. I don't exercise. I talk down to myself all the time. Well, if that's what we're treating to ourselves, we have a big billboard that says up, this is what I want from the universe. Do you see how our desire and our action can never go farther than our belief? In the 21 laws of leadership, the first law that John Maxwell talks about is the law of the lid. We can never attract something greater in our life that we are not willing to break the lid off of. Do you understand that? You see, many times we think of faith, we think of prayer, and we think of God, and we think of all these glorious, wonderful ideas and visions and dreams. But until we own them for ourselves, it's something outside of ourselves. It's something that we're separating ourselves. So if I write a prayer that I am healthy, I am whole, I am healed in the name of God, And as I'm walking up and putting that prayer in, all I feel is sickness, 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 sickness. What do you think's going to be the lid, if you will, on that prayer? God can only carry me as far as the foundation in my mind that I believe about God. But if I walk up sick as a dog, and just believe in the power and the presence of God. God is my healing. God is my healing. God is my healing. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care what the blood tests say. I don't care what the doctor says. God is my healing. God is my healing. Then it is the lid that has been blown off. And there are very people in this church right now that know what I'm talking about because they've been in that hospital. They've been shocked with that diagnosis. They've been told about this or that. And they said, I am not going to unite with that diagnosis. You see, this is the cliff notes, if you will, of creation itself. Whether it's physical, mental, spiritual, whether it's holy, whether it's prayerful, I don't even care. This works in the life of a man or a woman who has never stepped in a church in their life. But when we have God and we believe in God and we recognize holiness is at the foundation of our life, there are no lids. In our life, when we desire and we act and our beliefs are great and glorious and grace-filled, we synchronize these three qualities together. There is a creative force that moves us beyond even what we believe we can attain. And that is where prayer comes in. See, prayer ultimately, I believe, is a positive faith that God will take care of us no matter what we face. God, as we understand God, is the indwelling intelligence, the wisdom, the spirit, the breath, if you will, in our very life. And a positive faith in the intelligence, the inspiration, the strength, the power, the faith, the life, the love, the joy, the power to heal. A positive faith in these qualities of God will move us through anything in our life. You see, prayer is great when we're in the prayer vigil. Prayer is wonderful on Sunday when we're all together. But I want to tell you something. Man, prayer was meant for those moments where we're on our last leg, if you will. Prayer really works great in the time we think we have no strength left. Prayer works best when our ego has been crushed. When we put out of all of our control issues, when everything we've tried to do has fallen apart. That is the moment to just, my prayer in those moments I've shared it. God, 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 God. You don't need any other flowery scriptural words. You don't need any other thoughts. God, 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 God. And just believe it. Like I say, believe it beyond the circumstance. It doesn't matter who you are. God works in all of our lives when we declare the power and presence of God in this now moment. The Bible says God is no respecter of persons. You see, if our mind is thinking God, God is expressing God in our life. And it's always setting creation into motion. And that is the goal of prayer. That is why I say desire synchronized with action, synchronized with belief, just blows the lid off of anything that appears to be holding us back. Because if we feel we have no power, today, if we feel drained, if we feel we can't go on any longer, and we act in alignment with that feeling, then we won't go on any longer. We won't express strength. But if we flip that around and say, if we feel we have no power, and we feel drained, and we turn within, and we feel God, and we feel God, and we feel God, God then becomes the power that recharges us. Charles Fillmore said something wonderful. I've got to break it down for you. He said the highest form of prayer is to, 1, open our mind. 2, quietly realize that the one omnipresence intelligence knows our thoughts and instantly answers. See, prayers are instantly answered. Prayers are a spiritual transformation. Prayers change us. Then everything else has to catch up with the change we've already declared over us. First, open our mind. If we put a prayer in and the prayer itself has a limit, then aren't we in fact limiting the Holy Spirit's power in our life? So if we put a prayer in, you ever put that prayer in and then you negotiate it walking back to, God, pay this bill. I'm just using a bill thing because pay this bill. Then walking back from the prayer box, well, maybe if you pay half of it, God, we negotiate. God didn't say a word. We only took 4 steps from the prayer box. We should have been putting that bill in, be like, it's paid, 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 it's paid. Do you understand what I'm saying? The point of prayer is to transcend the appearance of the situation. We have the desire. Nobody wakes up with a desire to have a life worse than yesterday. All right? And if that's your desire, find a new church, man, because I am not going to, hold that. I don't want no gloom and doom. Now, I've been through enough these past 6 months. If you want to see God, just read my story. And so prayer opens our mind, and then the realization that takes place is a quiet inner one. And the realization is what? That God is infinite, God is intelligence, God is strength, God is life, and God instantly answers the prayer, even before we have audibly expressed it. See, the majority of people, I think, today think that prayer requires this great spiritual faith. And that prayer requires, something outside of us to get marvelous results. But Jesus the Christ taught differently. Jesus taught differently. One time the apostles were around him and they're like, Master, increase our faith. And he looked at them and he said, listen, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to the mulberry tree, be uprooted and planted in the sea, and it will obey you. And I'm thinking, I never really figured out till this week why he used the tree thing. I know the mustard seed, and we all know because I've given them out. They're that tiny little pinpoint. They are tiny. You can barely even hold one in your hand, and it produces a huge tree. But now I understand why one time he spoke about a mountain being thrown into the sea, but in another time he said the tree is uprooted. I think because the lesson is a tiny bit of faith needs to uproot a lifetime of negativity sometimes. We cannot transform our life just on the surface. You ever try and cut a weed just on the surface? It grows back. Sometimes there are things in our life that we just need this tiny bit of faith, but we have to totally uproot it and get rid of it. And that's what he was saying, that just the smallest amount of faith can turn any situation that we believed had power over us on its side. In Habakkuk, the 2nd chapter, in the 4th verse, it says, the righteousness live by their faith. And all of this, I want you to realize, is all talking about the transformation that takes place in our heart and mind. See, being righteous, what is it? It's right thinking. Right thinking. And what is right thinking? I say it's thinking turned to God with unlimited faith. Right thinking in my life is a foundation that there is no situation that can hold me back. Wherever we find the mind at work, we find our faith. And so if we see our mind going down this slippery, negative, depressing slope, only we have the power to be like, stop right there. Because in the highest form, faith always lifts us up. And so it's that tree metaphor that goes to the third part, the foundational beliefs in our life. Some of them are negative. Some of them we have been told we're no good. Some of them have been told you're outside the kingdom of God. But I am here to tell you this morning that you are directly related to the one God, the only God, and through the Spirit of God, you can do mighty works in your life from today forward. Positive faith tells me that everyone under the sound of my voice today can do anything and overcome anything when we stop buying into lesser, less than, not enough thinking. If we're facing stress today, no matter what is stressing us out, pray with the desire to not be stressed. And then believe this too has already passed. And then take some action in the right direction. I don't care if the action is just go walk around a block. Walk in a park. Get out of that slippery slope of domino, one negative thought after another negative thought after another negative thought. Because when we're depressed and when we're down, God is our joy. No human limitation can ever hold us back. God can never be depleted. God can never be drained. God doesn't get worn out. God is endless, ever-expanding power in our life. There is no storm that can stand up to the power of God. This has to be in our foundational belief. There is no situation that can hold us back when God is moving us forward. I pray that every action in our life communicates this for the rest of the year. I know that God can lift me up because I've seen it happen over and over and over again in my own life. I think that the reason we all come to church each week is because we have faith in God. And sometimes we forget this, even ourselves. We look with the world with these eyes, or we hear the world with these ears, and we forget the blessing, we forget the miracles, we forget the power and the presence and the love and the life that God is. And then Sunday comes and we remember. We remember that we can walk into this place and God can take our heart and form it. That God can take my mind and transform it. That God can take my life and conform it to the holiest and greatest and most ever-expanding good and desire that I can dream of. And on a day like today is difficult. We see all the lights, and all the lights before me are the prayers that were lit on Thursday. And on the same day, it's September 11th. And September 11th, 10 years ago, we remember those attacks. We remember waking up in the morning like any other morning and having everything we believed in destroyed. Having all the security and safety stripped from us. We remember planes going to the Pentagon. We remember, not knowing. Remember looking out the window if we heard a plane. And today I'm inviting everybody to remember God. We mourn those lives that were lost 10 years ago. But we honor the heroes that saved tens of thousands of people that day. The policemen, the firemen, the policewomen, the firewomen. All the people in the air traffic controllers that all of a sudden had to shut down the entire airline industry. We honor the spirit that moved through tens of thousands of people that day. You see, we mourn the lives that were lost. We honor the heroes. But I want to share with you is I realized that in my life, the worst day of American history was that day. Some of you were around for Pearl Harbor. I wasn't. Some of you remember the day Kennedy was shot. I was 6 months old. But I remember that day. My generation remembers that as the worst day in American history. But then I remember that day, and I remember the days after it. I remember how it also brought out the best in people that I had ever seen in my life. I remember the weeks after that when there was no racism. I remember the days after that when people weren't men or women or black or white or Latin. I remember when we were all Americans and we were all here to support and protect each other. And so I remember that. how great it can be, I remember how great we can be. Let's take a moment of silence, complete silence, and remember how great we are. Take my heart and form it. Take my mind, transform it. God, take my life and conform it. Amen. Maya?